Well, we're joined now from Washington by Hardin Lang, Vice President for Programmes and Policy at Refugees International. Mr. Lang, thank you very much for being with us. Dreadful pictures coming out of both Turkey and Syria, but as we heard in that report there, particularly profound in Syria because of a decade of civil war, sanctions, political instability. Talk us through in a bit more detail what that does to the rescue operation on the ground.
It's an excellent question. I mean, the situation in Syria, particularly the situation in northwest Syria, is acute on chronic, right? For the last over 10 years of conflict, has destroyed a great deal of the infrastructure, punished the civilian population. In northwest Syria, you have over 4 million people who are already in need of humanitarian assistance, millions who have been displaced from other parts of the country, who are living very close to the line. The only aid that gets into northwest Syria really comes through a cross-border UN mechanism to supply assistance through one border crossing at this stage. And those 4 million people already were being massively under-resourced. The UN appeal for this year was at less than 50% in terms of its funding. And those populations are the ones that are going to be probably hit the hardest. There are definitely areas controlled by the Syrian government that have also been hit extremely hard, but there's probably greater capacity there to respond. I mean, the Syrian government has a history of brutality and withholding humanitarian assistance, but they do have capacity, and there are UN agencies there to support. In northwest Syria, it's really up to organizations like the White Helmets and civil society groups that are the first line and the last line of defense for the civilian population in responding to this crisis.
One of the issues with getting supplies into Syria are the sanctions which have been imposed on President Bashar al-Assad. Are those going to remain in place? How much does that hamper operations? Is there a way of circumventing them?
So the sanctions regime does present some challenges, although in the northwest Syria, most of the humanitarian assistance that is required under the exemptions that are in place allow that humanitarian assistance to get in. The same is also probably true in much of Syria. However, when you're looking at early recovery efforts, the kind of activities that are going to need to respond here, it's a little bit more gray. It's a more complicated situation. And that's the place where there's really going to be some question marks about what can get done. But perhaps even more challenging than the sanctions at this stage are going to be the damage to the infrastructure. Right now, there's only 1 or 2 major roads that aid can travel in to get into northwest Syria. And those roads have been heavily damaged by the earthquake. This is a situation that's going to be very, very challenging indeed.
We're talking about people who have lost their homes as well as schools and hospitals. But Syria is a country in which millions are already internally displaced, living in tents in refugee camps. How much does that complicate things?
Massively. You have a population that's tremendously vulnerable. And if you think about what needs to happen, right, there's first search and rescue to try to get people out of the rubble, then to provide medical assistance to those survivors. And right now, there's very little medical assistance that's available in northwest Syria. Many of the hospitals have collapsed, or the rest of them are under-resourced. And then you have to attend to people who have been displaced by the crisis. And you already have millions of people who have been displaced, and it's the middle of winter. So in essence, you're really dealing with a perfect storm of a complex crisis with very little capacity to respond to that. I mean, really, the crucial thing now is getting assistance into the hands of local organizations and local civil society that really are at the coalface of this disaster. And the question is, how fast can we improve access and open it up to get aid to those who need it?
OK, Hardin Lang from the Refugees International Organisation. Really good to get your insights. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.